Hey there, welcome back to the channel. If you love crazy, true, or just plain unbelievable stories, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment down below. I want to know what you think by the end of this one. All right, let's get into it. You think you could handle the life of a samurai? Think again. In feudal Japan, even a single misstep, a poorly timed joke, a moment of hesitation, could cost you everything. The Bushido code demanded perfection, and failure meant seppuku. Tonight, we'll show you why the romanticized image of the samurai is a far cry from the brutal, silent discipline that defined their existence. Your first breath in feudal Japan already seals your fate. As a samurai's child, you're born into the second highest caste, below only the nobility. The rigid social hierarchy locks you and everyone else into place like pieces on a shogi board. At the top sit the emperor and shogun, followed by daimyo warlords. Then comes you, the samurai. Below you, peasants who grow rice, artisans who make goods, and merchants who trade them. At the bottom, the untouchables handle death and filth. The irony stings immediately. Wealthy merchants live in luxury but rank below dirt-poor farmers in social standing. A rich cloth trader must bow to you, a penniless teenage samurai, because tradition says so. In 1649, the Tokugawa shogunate made this hierarchy law with the Kion Civil Code. It forbade peasants from wearing silk, merchants from riding in palanquins, and samurai from becoming farmers. When a merchant named Yodoya Tatsugoro grew too prosperous in Osaka, the government confiscated his entire fortune. They accused him of living above his station. The Norman in Salamita. This isn't just formality, it's survival. Farmers produce food but can't carry swords. Artisans create weapons but can't use them. You, a samurai, do nothing productive, but have the legal right to cut down any commoner who disrespects you. In 1610, a retainer of the Shimazu clan beheaded a townsman for laughing near his procession. No trial, just one downward slash of his katana, and the matter was settled. Your position comes with relentless scrutiny. Late 17th century records from Edo show neighborhood associations spying on samurai households. They reported anyone violating sumptuary laws. The wrong fabric pattern on a wife's kimono could trigger an investigation. In 1692, the Tokugawa government confiscated a retainer's property because his mother hosted a tea ceremony deemed too lavish. The punishment wasn't just for show. Maintaining this order kept the peace through 250 years of Tokugawa rule. Samurai boys face pressure from their first steps. A 16th century child-rearing manual, words of a sagely mother, instructs, "Do not let the infant touch soft fabrics, lest he grow accustomed to comfort." Your father tests your pain tolerance before you can read. He makes you kneel on polished wood floors until your legs go numb. He wakes you with cold water thrown in your face. This isn't cruelty, it's preparation. In 1575, at the Battle of Nagashino, Takeda samurai children as young as 12 died holding spears against Oda Nobunaga's gunmen. The caste system molds your body and speech. You learn to talk in formal keigo honorifics, twisting every phrase to show status differences. A samurai never says "you" to a superior. Only convoluted constructions like "the honorable presence over there." When the daimyo's inspector visits, your entire family rehearses greeting sequences for hours. One wrong verb ending could mean demotion. In 1638, a retainer in Okayama lost his stipend for addressing his lord with insufficient humility during a poetry recital. What looks like pointless ritual keeps the machine running. Your sword isn't just a weapon, it's your ID card. The 1629 Sword Hunt Edict made it illegal for anyone but samurai to carry blades. When you walk through Edo's merchant districts, commoners part like water around you. They know that in 1651 a group of Ronin slaughtered an entire Kyoto moneylender's family over an interest dispute. The courts ruled it justifiable, quote, discipline, end quote. Your position isolates you. Peasants resent your privileges. Artisans fear your temper. Even other samurai watch for slips in protocol. The 1710, quote, regulations for military houses dictated everything from how often you must visit your daimyo to when you could remodel your gate. Breaking these rules meant more than shame. In 1697, the Ki domain exiled a samurai for planting decorative shrubs without permission. They called it arrogant landscaping, end quote. Your childhood ends tonight. Tomorrow at dawn, your father takes you to the family sword polisher. The tanto dagger you receive won't be for fighting. It's your first lesson in mortality. By week's end, you'll know how to open your own stomach with it, should disgrace ever come. The steel against your palm feels heavier than you imagined. It carries the weight of 400 years of ancestors watching. Your wooden sword feels heavier than it should for a 3-year-old. That's your first lesson. Comfort is an illusion. While modern kids stack blocks, you're learning stances. Your father corrects your grip for the 10th time today. Thumb placement, just so, wrists locked. The bokken isn't a toy. It's a placeholder for the real blades that will come later, if you survive training. Kirogez. The regime starts before sunrise. Cold baths to harden your body. Memorizing Confucian classics at dawn. By age 5, you're writing characters with a brush while kneeling in correct posture. Slouching earns a stripe to the shoulders with a bamboo stick. Your tutor doesn't care that your hands ache. In 1560, the young Tokugawa Ieyasu trained this same way, composing his first death poem at 7 years old. His verse reportedly compared life to morning dew. You won't understand the metaphor for years, but you'll recite it perfectly by next week. Kirogez just look like. Physical conditioning feels like punishment. Running up hills, carrying buckets of water, balancing on one leg until collapse. Your legs bruise from hours of practice. Falls in the dojo. The worst part isn't the pain, it's the silence. Crying gets you extra drills. Showing frustration means cleaning the weapons racks alone. At 6, you witness an older boy vomit during spear training. His father makes him lick it up. No one reacts. This is normal. The contrast with peasant children is stark. While they play tag in rice fields, you're studying archery angles. Their hands get dirty with soil, yours blister from sword calluses. They learn practical skills like patching rubes. You memorize the 48 essential sword cuts from the Katori Shinto Ryu scrolls. The difference isn't just training, it's mindset. In 1582, a visiting Jesuit missionary wrote that samurai children, quote, bore themselves like miniature generals, and even during games, quote, girls face different expectations. Your sister practices tea ceremony while you spar. She learns to walk silently in 12 layered kimonos, her posture monitored by aunt's warding sticks. Her education revolves around managing households and spotting political slights in casual conversation. A highborn girl might study poetry, but only if it doesn't interfere with sewing her brother's practice uniforms. In 1639, the daughter of a Hiroshima retainer was reportedly beaten for reading novels during weaving lessons. Mental conditioning runs deeper than physical. Every night you recount your mistakes to your father, missed blocking angles during kendo, hesitation in reciting clan genealogy. The punishments aren't arbitrary, they're calibrated. A 17th century training manual warns that spoiled children become swords without tempering. Your father follows this exactly. When you drop your bokken at age 4, he makes you hold it overhead until your arms shake. When you complain, he doubles the time. The weapons progress as you grow. Wooden swords give way to blunt metal blades called habiki by age 8. Footwork drills incorporate live steel at 10. Your first real katana comes at 13, but it's not yours yet. You must earn the right to wear it. The polishing ritual takes hours. You learn to disassemble the blade, inspecting the grain of the steel for flaws. A single speck of rust means an entire night of maintenance drills. In 1694, a Sendai domain samurai wrote in his diary about finding rust on his son's sword. The boy spent 3 days cleaning armor as punishment. High academic studies never stop. You dissect Chinese military stratagems at breakfast. Afternoon calligraphy sessions punish sloppy characters with extra pages. Poetry seems pointless until your tutor explains how metaphors convey hidden messages in court. A well-turned verse could save your life during hostage negotiations. A poorly written one got a retainer from the Satsuma domain, exiled in 1672. His allegory about cherry blossoms accidentally insulted the daimyo's lineage. The most brutal lessons involve pain tolerance. At 7, you must sit motionless while a tutor drips hot wax on your forearm. At 9, you practice meditation in freezing rivers. Your father cites the legend of Tsukahara Bokuden, who, as a child, supposedly trained by standing waist-deep in snow until his legs went numb. The stories aren't just inspiration, they're warnings. In 1615, a Osaka castle defender's teenage son broke during interrogation. His family erased his name from their records. By 12, your childhood is effectively over. You've survived the first culling. Boys who couldn't keep up were quietly sent to monasteries or adopted by childless merchants. Now the real tests begin. Your first supervised duel, your first audience with the daimyo, your first time witnessing seppuku. The wooden sword is long gone. What replaces it is heavier than steel. The unspoken understanding that one day your father will hand you the family blades and expect you to uphold 6 centuries of honor with them. You don't play anymore. Not after seeing what happens to boys who do. Last summer, a cousin laughed during archery practice. His instructor made him hold the target while others shot. The arrow that skipped off his ribcage taught everyone the cost of frivolity. Your father nods approvingly when you mention it. This is the point. Samurai aren't born. They're forged through years of calculated suffering. Tomorrow brings spear drills before dawn, but tonight you have lines to copy. The way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death. Your brushstrokes barely tremble now. Progress. You learn to swallow tears before you learn to write your name. At 5 years old, when a training sword cracks your ribs, you bite your tongue until it bleeds rather than cry out. Showing pain isn't just weakness, it's disobedience. Your father watches for the slightest flinch. In 1631, a Nagasaki samurai recorded punishing his son by making him sit perfectly still with a wasp on his nose. The sting lasted seconds. The lesson lasted a lifetime. Emotional control isn't optional, it's armor. The Bushido code demands a face that never betrays joy or sorrow, literally translated as the expression of a man who has never known happiness. You practice in mirrors, smoothing your features into blankness. Even blinking too much gets corrected. By 8, you can take a spear shaft to the shins without changing your breathing. In 1598, Toyotomi Hideyoshi's bodyguards reportedly stood motionless for hours, while bees swarmed around them during his outdoor tea ceremony. No one slapped at insects. No one even twitched. Conversation becomes a minefield. A misplaced laugh during a poetry reading could be interpreted as mockery. A frown at the wrong moment might signal dissent. Silence is safest. Clan records from 1654 describe a retainer who lost his stipend for sighing during his daimyo's bad flute performance. The punishment wasn't about music. It was about the implied criticism in that exhale. You learn to communicate through slight chin tilts, almost imperceptible nods. A raised eyebrow can mean approval or deadly insult, depending on context. Family offers no relief. You address your older brother with the same formal honorifics used for superiors. Correcting your father is unthinkable, even if he's wrong about historical facts during your lessons. In 1679, a Kumamoto samurai's diary mentions his 7-year-old son whispering a correction about a battle date. The boy spent 3 nights locked in the storehouse, with no meals as punishment. When he emerged, his first words were an apology poem, comparing himself to a foolish cricket tripping at the moon. The methods used to break emotional responses border on cruelty. Your tutor makes you recite multiplication tables while he drips hot wax on your wrists. You're forced to hold uncomfortable positions for hours. If you complain, time resets. The infamous Tsukahara Bokuden supposedly trained disciples by having them meditate under icy waterfalls in winter. His manual claimed true warriors could stop shivering through willpower alone. In 1612, a freezing servant boy died attempting this feat to impress his samurai employer. The incident was recorded as a regrettable lack of judgment, not a tragedy. Conflict resolution is its own torture. Apologies require theatrical displays, deep bows held painfully long, gifts of expensive sake or swords delivered wrapped in white apology paper. In 1645, a retainer in Sendai accidentally bumped his superior during a rainstorm. His atonement included presenting 3 prize falcons and composing 30 linked verse poems about humility. The offended party still challenged him to a duel months later over an unrelated slight. Surviving letters show the original offender let himself be disarmed rather than fight back, further humiliating himself to end the feud. Marriage compounds the pressure. Your future wife, selected for clan alliances rather than affection, will expect the same emotional absence. Smiling too much at her could be seen as neglectful devotion to duty. Confiding fears would make you unfit to lead. Diaries from samurai wives reveal hidden sadness. One wrote of pressing her face into bedding to muffle sobs after her husband left for war. The same woman publicly praised his stoicism as virtuous when he returned unscathed but distant. Preparation for death is the final exam. At 12, you witness your first seppuku, a disgraced cousin kneeling calmly as he disembowels himself. The crucial moment isn't the pain, but the speech beforehand. His voice stays flat. His hands don't shake. Later, your father makes you practice the etiquette, positioning the dagger correctly, cutting left to right without screaming, falling forward neatly so your second can behead you cleanly. You rehearse daily until the motions feel rote, like tying your sash or brewing tea. The psychological toll shows in small cracks. Some samurai developed compulsive habits, endless sword polishing, obsessive poetry writing. Others took out frustrations on servants. Historical accounts describe sudden madness outbreaks where normally restrained warriors would destroy furniture or attack trees. In 1698, a retainer in Edo supposedly stabbed his own thigh during an argument just to prove he wouldn't react to pain. His lord praised the display, while the wound festered for weeks. Ironically, the system breeds its own betrayals. The same emotional depression taught to preserve clan loyalty makes treason easier. Switching allegiances requires no more facial expression than changing armor. When Tokugawa Ieyasu overthrew his former allies in 1600, countless retainers transferred service without visible guilt. One day they bowed to one lord's banner. The next day they burned it without hesitation. Survival trumps sentiment every time. Your training succeeds when you stop imagining alternatives. The boy who cried when his puppy died at age 6 wouldn't recognize the teenager who executes a peasant thief without blinking at 14. The transition happens gradually, one suppressed gasp, one swallowed protest at a time. By your first battle, When you slash open a man's stomach and his intestines spill out steaming in the cold air, your only thought will be checking your sleeves for bloodstains before reporting back to command. This is what mastery looks like. This is why they start the lessons so young. The ultimate payoff comes decades later, when your own son watches impassively as you commit seppuku for a political miscalculation. Your hands don't shake as you write your death poem comparing life to cherry blossoms. His dry eyes reflect your lifelong teaching. Emotion is the one enemy a samurai can never truly defeat, only temporarily outmaneuver. When the dagger bites deep, you feel proud. The training held. Not a single scream escapes.
Your sword hand better hold that calligraphy brush just as steady.
While peasants learn practical skills, your education demands mastery of ink and paper. The morning starts with grinding your own inkstone. Too thick and your characters blob. Too thin and they bleed through the paper. Your tutor watches each stroke. A shaky line means rewriting the entire page. By age 7, you know the pressure difference needed to paint bamboo leaves versus armor detailing in clan crests. Mess up the crest, and you might as well have spit on your daimyo's doorstep. Poetry isn't art, it's survival. You memorize the Hyakunin issue anthology, not because it's beautiful, but because misquoting a classic could get you killed. In 1615, a retainer in Kyoto used the wrong seasonal metaphor while toasting his lord. The poem compared the daimyo's favor to spring rain, implying his generosity was fleeting. The man lost his position by sundown. Now you practice 20 variations of moon viewing verses before breakfast, each calibrated for different social ranks. Calligraphy exposes weakness faster than a duel. Your tutor spots frustration in the way your brush hesitates on the downstroke. Anger shows in splattered ink droplets. Fear makes characters shrink. There's a reason warlords demanded handwritten loyalty oaths. The strokes betrayed deceit. Date Masamune supposedly identified a traitor in 1598 because the man's normally bold handwriting grew cramped when pledging allegiance. You train daily until even bad news gets transcribed with flawless characters. When your dog dies at age 9, your condolence letter to the puppy's breeder wins praise for its composed brushwork.
Strategy scrolls replace bedtime stories.
While other kids hear folktales, you analyze Sun Tzu's diagrams of terrain advantages. Failure here has literal casualties. In 1570, a Mizuno clan tactician misread a topography map and led cavalry into a swamp. His punishment was watching as his stranded men got picked off by archers. Now, you redraw battle maps blindfolded, plotting ambush points based on wind direction and rice field irrigation patterns. Your father tests you by rearranging the furniture to simulate castle corridors. Navigate wrong, and you die to imagine spear thrusts. Diplomacy happens in verse. When two clans negotiate, they exchange poems, not contracts. The imagery conveys threats no one dares say aloud. A reference to falling cherry blossoms might hint at a short-lived alliance. Mentioning winter crows could imply you'll wait to pick over their corpses. In 1634, the Tokugawa shogunate intercepted a seemingly innocent exchange about autumn leaves between rival lords. The poem's structure revealed troop movement plans hidden in syllable counts. Now, you practice encoding troop numbers into tanka verses, 5 lines to hide 5 battalions' positions. Even romance requires literary assassination. The pillow book you secretly read shows court ladies rejecting suitors through acrostic poems with buried insults. Your future marriage negotiations will involve evaluating your bride's calligraphy samples alongside her family's battlefield record. A 1658 diary records a match being canceled because the girl's handwriting showed willfulness in its hooked endings. You already know to burn your practice sheets. No one can see the angrier verses you write about your tutors. Death demands perfect punctuation. Every samurai prepares their final poem from the moment they earn their swords. Not having one ready is like forgetting your armor before battle. When Kuroda Nagamasa committed seppuku in 1623, observers noted how his shaking hand smeared one character. The disgrace overshadowed his actual crimes. You draft death poems weekly, revising them like armor fittings. Too florid and you seem afraid to die. Too simple and you look unintelligent. The version in your sleeve today compares your life to a single stroke of ink, brief, dark, and deliberately placed. The pressure twists some minds. There are always stories of retainers snapping over poetry slights. In 1671, a Satsuma samurai attacked a guest for using inferior paper during a moon viewing party. The court ruled it justified. Proper materials showed respect. Another, in 1699, supposedly challenged his own brother to a duel over a disputed metaphor in their father's eulogy. You understand the fury. After years of measuring every syllable, watching some hack misquote "ki no surayuki" feels like seeing them track mud across your polished sword. Ironically, these soft skills make you deadlier. Knowing classics by heart lets you catch disguised insults during treaty negotiations. Spotting a rushed brushstroke in a surrender document reveals desperation. In 1600, Tokugawa scouts identified fake troop counts because the enemy's scribe forgot to vary his stroke pressure on certain numbers. Recently, your strategy tutor made you play Go while reciting poetry. The mental split mimics planning campaigns during court small talk. Your graduation test comes at 13. The daimyo visits, and you must present an original poem while serving tea. The verses must reference the season, but not predictably. Praise his lineage, but not obsequiously. And demonstrate classical knowledge, but not pedantically. Last year, a boy sneezed during his recitation. They transferred him to a border garrison notorious for bandit raids. As you kneel with your tea bowl, you notice your reflection in the liquid, face blank, hands steady. Only you feel the heartbeat hammering behind your ribs. The verse you chose compares his rule to steady calligraphy on stormy paper. It's borderline risky. He pauses, then nods. Later, your father tells you the daimyo appreciated the metaphor's restraint. You don't smile. But that night, you allow yourself one extra rice ball before drilling sword forms again. Tomorrow brings the physical trials. 8 hours of spear training, armor runs, and horseback archery. Part of you welcomes it. At least with weapons, the rules stay visible. The first time you strap on full samurai armor, you realize why they start training kids so young. The chest plate alone weighs more than you did at age 5. Layers of silk robes go on first, deep blues and earthy browns that mark your rank, sometimes with blood red accents if you're high enough status. The colors aren't just decorative. At a glance across a battlefield, commanders need to spot their officers. Your daisho swords get checked next. The long katana and short wakizashi must sit at precise angles on your hip. One finger width too high or low, and your armor bearer gets a backhand. Putting it all together takes 20 minutes with help. First the armored sleeves, then the chest plate laced tight enough to restrict breathing. The thigh guards feel like wearing wooden buckets. The helmet goes on last, the metal brim pressing down on your forehead like a cold hand. By the time you're fully suited up, you've lost a third of your peripheral vision, and the weight drags on your shoulders like carrying a small child. In 1575, records describe Takeda horsemen having to be lifted onto their mounts because their armor was so heavy. You believe it. The physical toll starts immediately. After 4 hours, your lower back screams from the weight distribution. The helmet gives you a headache from constant pressure on your temples. In summer, the layered silk turns into a sweat-soaked oven. You learn not to drink water before long ceremonies. Peeling off armor to piss is a hassle most samurai avoid through dehydration. Clan physician records from the 1600s show chronic kidney problems from this practice. The armor reshapes your body over time. Your neck thickens to support the helmet weight. Your posture bends slightly forward, ready to draw your sword at any moment. Maintenance is a nightly ritual. After removing each piece, you inspect the silk lacing for fraying. A single loose thread could unravel during battle. The metal plates get wiped with vinegar to prevent rust. Any tarnish reflects poorly on your discipline. In 1631, a retainer supposedly committed seppuku after his daimyo spotted corrosion on his shoulder guards. You spend hours polishing the black lacquer on your helmet until you can see your face in it. The reflection always looks tired. Movement becomes a calculated effort. Running in armor feels like sprinting through waist-deep water. Kneeling requires shifting your weight just right to avoid pinching your thighs between the guards. Even sitting cross-legged needs practice. One wrong move, and a sharp metal edge slices your calf. Your swordsmanship adapts to the constraints. Overhead strikes are shorter because the helmet blocks your upward vision. Footwork turns into careful slides rather than steps. You train daily until drawing your katana one-handed in full armor feels natural. The armor dictates your combat style. Against peasant rebels with no protection, you can afford methodical movements. But facing other samurai means fighting through exhaustion. Battle accounts describe warriors stopping mid-skirmish to vomit from heat stroke. Your tactics adapt. You aim for armpits and neck gaps where the armor's weak. In close quarters, you use the helmet's weight to headbutt opponents. The metal brim makes a decent crushing weapon when swordplay isn't an option. Staying battle-ready means constant adjustments. Before marches, you rub wax on the armor's interior to prevent chafing. Your attendants stuff dried moss between plates to absorb sweat. When it gets soggy, the smell clings for days. During the 1592 Korea campaign, samurai diaries complain of maggots breeding in poorly maintained armor. You check yours daily for lice. The inspection routine takes longer than actual weapons maintenance. Oddly, the weight becomes comforting over time. The pressure on your shoulders feels like being held accountable. When you finally remove the armor each night, your body feels strangely light, too vulnerable. Some retainers reportedly slept in partial armor during wartime. You understand why. That moment buckling on the chest plate each morning becomes a meditation. The way the silk laces dig into your ribs reminds you what you are. Certain rituals reinforce the armor's symbolism. Before your first battle at age 16, your father makes you wear it for 3 straight days. By the end, your skin is raw where the edges rubbed, but you don't complain. During your coming-of-age ceremony, the daimyo himself tightens one of your shoulder straps, a calculated gesture of trust. Later, you'll notice older samurai stand differently, even when unarmored. Their spines stay rigid from decades of compensating for the weight. The ultimate test comes during your first real battle. When the arrow thuds into your chest plate, the impact bruises your sternum but doesn't pierce the armor held. As you pull the shaft out, you notice the fletching is peasant-made, crude compared to samurai arrows. The realization hits harder than the arrow did. This system works. The layers of silk and metal, the years of discomfort, they all served their purpose. You straighten your helmet and keep marching. Later, you'll spend hours checking every inch of that chest plate for damage. Not because you fear death, but because a single dent could imply you faltered. Stow. Now, when you see unarmored peasants, their movements seem reckless. How casually they twist their bodies, how freely they breathe. You can't remember what that felt like. Tomorrow at dawn, you'll strap it all on again. The silk, the metal, the weight of centuries. The armor isn't just protection anymore. It's who you've become. Your day starts in darkness every morning without fail. The rooster hasn't even crowed yet when your eyes snap open. This isn't natural. You've trained your body to wake at this ungodly hour since you were 5. The first rule of being a samurai: showing up late means showing up dead. In 1632, a retainer in Osaka overslept by half an hour and found himself reassigned to latrine duty for 6 months. His wife left him out of shame. You rise silently. No groaning. No stretching where someone might hear. The straw mat leaves red marks on your bare knees as you kneel facing east. Dawn meditation comes first, not the peaceful kind modern people do. Your Zen teacher once hit you with a bamboo stick for letting your breathing become too relaxed. Proper samurai meditation is about focus, not comfort. You count breaths while visualizing sword cuts, your back straight enough to balance a bowl of water on your head. One account from 1589 describes a warrior who meditated in full armor during winter mornings until icicles formed on his helmet. That's the standard. Next comes the inspection routine. You examine your hands first. Dirt under the nails could imply you skipped weapons maintenance. Then check your hair for lice, your teeth for stains. Body odor is unacceptable. You rub yourself down with a vinegar-soaked cloth, even in winter. Records from Edo Castle show attendants being dismissed for bad breath alone. Your clothing gets methodical attention. Wrinkles in your underrobes suggest laziness. The left side must always overlap the right. The opposite is how corpses get dressed for funerals. Armor preparation takes 27 precise steps, starting with checking the silk cords for fraying. One loose thread could unravel during battle. Your fingers move through the sequence automatically. Chest plate first, then shoulder guards, tying each knot with identical tension. The helmet goes on last, its weight familiar now after years of wear. In 1611, a Shimazu retainer forgot to fasten his thigh guards properly. During an ambush, they slipped and left his legs unprotected. They buried him with those blood-stained guards still dangling loose as a warning to others. In Tiord, breakfast is cold rice and pickled plums. If you're lucky, hot food makes you sluggish. Your father once made you train for 3 hours after vomiting up a too large meal. You eat exactly 18 mouthfuls, counted, while reviewing the day's schedule. Samurai diaries show meals took 7 minutes on average. Any longer was considered self-indulgent. The tea you drink afterward serves 2 purposes. It washes your mouth out, and its bitterness keeps you alert. Your tutor can tell if you've sweetened it by how quickly you react to surprises. The final test comes before you step outside. Your attendant holds up a polished bronze mirror. Does your posture show confidence without arrogance? Is your gaze focused but not wild? In 1598, a Tokugawa official rejected a vassal's petition because the man's eyebrows were too expressive. You adjust your expression to neutral, the perfect balance between readiness and calm. Mishima wrote that a samurai's face should frighten children but reassure lords. You practice until yours does both. All this before sunrise. By the time peasants are waking up, you've already meditated, armed yourself, and steeled your mind. The routine seems excessive until you remember the consequences of slipping. In 1645, a Hiroshima retainer missed a speck of rust on his sword guard. His daimyo spotted it during a routine inspection. The punishment? He had to wear a sign reading "careless" around his neck for a month. His daughter's marriage proposal got withdrawn that same week. Unexpected inspections could happen any time. Lords enjoyed catching retainers off guard. It proved who was truly disciplined. Some daimyo would summon warriors in the middle of the night to check their readiness. Accounts from Kumamoto describe a lord who'd have servants dump buckets of water on sleeping samurais' beds to test their reaction time. Passing meant springing up instantly, weapon in hand, without cursing. Failures got assigned to night watch duty in the stables. The pressure never lets up. Even your walk to the castle follows rules. Too slow suggests laziness. Too fast looks panicky. You keep exact spacing between yourself and other retainers, 4 paces apart unless speaking. In 1678, 2 samurai were fined for walking close enough that their sleeves touched. Their names got posted on the shame board near the gates. Visitors saw it for weeks. This grueling routine serves one purpose: removing the chance of mistakes. When battle comes, there's no time to think. Your body must know what to do before your mind processes the danger. The same applies to court politics. A single misworded phrase could end your lineage. All those pre-dawn meditations, all the armor checks and breath control, they're not just rituals. They're survival mechanisms. You see the proof when fighting breaks out unexpectedly. That time bandits ambushed your lord's procession. Your sword was drawn before conscious thought. While merchants screamed and peasants scattered, your arms moved automatically. Perfect cuts, measured breathing, awareness of terrain. Later people called it bravery. You know the truth. It was just good morning habits paying off. Now, when you see young recruits grumble about the 4 a.m. starts, you don't bother explaining. They'll learn the hard way, just like you did. Tomorrow will come before dawn again. The rooster will stay silent. Your eyes will open exactly when they should. And if the daimyo's spies catch you yawning, well, there are always empty spots in the stables needing night watchmen. The wrong word could cost you your head. As a samurai, every conversation feels like walking across a frozen river. One misstep and you plunge through the ice. Your speech follows rigid rules unseen in modern life. You don't just talk differently to your daimyo versus peasants. You use entirely separate vocabularies. The hierarchical speech patterns drill into you since childhood. Addressing a superior, you stretch sentences into convoluted formalities. With the honorable presence, perhaps consider glancing at this document when their infinite wisdom permits. Gets shortened to a sharp, read this, when speaking down. Get these patterns wrong once, and you might wake up with your name scrubbed from the clan registry. Silence often proves safest. In 1635, a retainer in Edo Castle died over 3 poorly chosen words. He'd commented, "The moon looks dim tonight," during a poetry gathering. The daimyo took it as criticism of his latest tax policies. They found the man's body in the moat next morning, his apology poem still clutched in stiff fingers. You learn to filter every sentence through 7 layers of caution. Compliments can seem arrogant if too effusive. Jokes risk offending someone's ancestors. Even agreeing too enthusiastically might imply you're trying to ingratiate yourself. Your safest bet? Nodding at precise angles, 15 degrees for equals, 30 for superiors, never full 90 unless begging forgiveness. The apology rituals could kill you faster than any battle. When you inevitably slip up, the process starts with stripping to your underrobe in the courtyard. You kneel on gravel while composing a remorseful waka poem, 31 syllables to convey perfect contrition. Present it with a gift, your second best sword wrapped in white apology paper. In 1621, a Shimazu retainer added his infant son as collateral to a forgiveness plea. The extreme gesture worked. Lesser errors require only minor self-debasement. A chronicle from 1653 describes a samurai who licked his daimyo's sandal to atone for spilling tea. The humiliation stings worse than any blade. Clan politics turned small talk into minefields. Two retainers discussing cherry blossoms might actually be arguing over border disputes through flower metaphors. Your tutor trains you to spot the hidden meanings. Falling petals could signal troop movements. Night-blooming flowers might mean covert attacks. In 1598, a coded poem about willow trees sparked the Bungo province uprising when one lord interpreted the imagery as treason. You practice these verbal duels daily, layering safe phrases over dangerous truths like sheaths over swords. The most skilled samurai could insult someone's lineage while sounding like they'd paid a compliment. Even laughter carries weight. Chuckling at your daimyo's joke shows proper respect. Smiling at a superior's misfortune implies you enjoy their disgrace. In 1672, a Hiroshima retainer got exiled for grinning during another Lord Seppuku ceremony. They said his expression showed unseemly pleasure. You train your face to remain neutral, the muscles aching from hours of stillness. Your wife becomes expert at spotting micro-expressions. She warns you with subtle sleeve tugs when your lips twitch at inappropriate moments. Family offers no safe space. You address your elder brother with the same honorifics used for liege lords. Correcting your father happens once in a lifetime. When he misremembers your grandfather's death poem at your coming-of-age ceremony, you stay silent despite knowing the verses by heart. Later, he praises your restraint. The relief tastes bitter. Diaries from 1619 describe a son who whispered corrections to his drunken father. They found the boy's body hanging in the storehouse, with his tongue cut out.
The hierarchy seals your fate in unexpected ways. Merchants you arrest for gambling might later supply your armor silk. Peasants you scorn grow the rice that becomes your field rations. In 1645, a Nagasaki samurai's carelessly spoken insult came back to haunt him. The merchant's son he'd mocked became the official overseeing his stipend. Suddenly, the arrogant warrior found himself bowing to the boy whose father he'd once humiliated. These reversals teach you early. Every interaction gets remembered, especially by those beneath you. Servants become your most dangerous audience. They hear everything, your midnight worries, your complaints about superiors, the poems you write but never share. Smart samurai pay their household staff well. Records from Edo show retainers who mysteriously fell from favor after their maids reported unguarded comments to officials. You train yourself to breathe through nosebleeds without groaning, to cough only when alone. The walls have ears, and those ears feed mouths connected to powerful men. The ultimate test comes during your first official meeting with the shogun's envoy. You rehearse for weeks with your tutor, which proverbs to use, how far to bend when offering documents, the exact pacing for delivering prepared remarks. When the day arrives, your voice stays measured even when the envoy deliberately mispronounces your clan name. You catch the insult, but respond as if he'd spoken perfectly. Later, your daimyo squeezes your shoulder, the only praise you'll receive. The backhanded compliment from the envoy matters less than your restrained response. You've passed the real test. Learning that most battles are won by not fighting them. Now, when you see young samurai practicing swordsmanship, you watch their mouths more than their blades. The truly dangerous ones move silently. Their katanas stay sheathed while their words do the cutting. Tomorrow will bring new verbal traps. A provincial governor's veiled threat, your captain's loaded question about troop morale. You'll navigate them the same way you learn to walk across frozen rivers, testing each step, distributing your weight, and knowing when to stand perfectly still. The ice always cracks loudest under those who rush. Your life belongs to him the moment you take his rice. The daimyo doesn't just employ you, he owns every breath you take. His slightest frown could mean demotion. A raised eyebrow might send you to the front lines. In 1590, a retainer in Odawara sneezed during his lord's speech and spent the next decade guarding swamplands. That's the best case scenario. The worst ends with your dagger in your guts. Morning starts with the bowing ritual. You approach the audience chamber at the exact pace dictated by your rank. Too slow shows disrespect. Too fast implies desperation. The angle of your bow changes based on who's present. 30 degrees for the daimyo steward, 45 for his heir, 90 for the lord himself. A 1667 manual specifies bowing deeper to someone who outranks you by exactly 3 positions could be seen as sarcasm. You've practiced this in the mirror for hours. Today your head dips to 89 degrees. Close enough. Your daily duties read like punishment, processing tax documents from dawn till dusk, inspecting peasant granaries for hidden harvests, standing guard during the daimyo's 4-hour bath like a human coat rack. The worst assignments test obedience, not skill. In 1623, a Nagasaki retainer had to lick clean the shoes of his lord's visiting rival to prove clan loyalty. He did it without hesitation. They promoted him the next week.
The psychological toll shows in subtle ways. You dream of rebellion but wake up checking your sword polish. You fantasize about speaking freely, but practice self-censorship even in sleep. An Edo period medical text describes samurai sickness, chronic stomach pain from repressed emotions. Your father had it, your grandfather died from it. You've learned to swallow bile so well you barely taste it anymore. Loyalty tests come without warning. One morning the daimyo might order you to execute your favorite horse. Another day he'll demand you divorce your wife because her cousin criticized his poetry. In 1588, a Takeda vassal had to burn down his own house to prove readiness for an arson mission. The truly skilled samurai anticipate these tests. They kill the horse before being asked. They start drafting divorce papers at the first rumor of the wife's relative gossiping. Public humiliations reinforce the hierarchy. When you spill tea at a banquet, the punishment isn't private. They make you crawl through the hall on your knees while guests throw fish bones at you. In 1634, a retainer in Kyoto had to wear a ridiculous hat for a month after forgetting part of his lord's lineage. The hat read "Forgetful Fool" in bright red characters. His children refused to be seen with him. Absolute loyalty means absolute sacrifice. When the daimyo's son needs a sparring partner, you let him break your nose to build confidence. If his mistress needs an alibi, you swear you spent the night with her. In 1619, a bodyguard took an arrow meant for his lord during a hunting accident that was clearly assassination. His dying words praised the shooter's excellent form. The financial strain tightens like a noose. Your stipend barely covers armor maintenance, much less the mandatory gifts for every festival. When the daimyo's daughter marries, you give a year's wages. When his dog dies, you contribute to the funeral. Records show some retainers sold heirlooms to pay for these voluntary offerings. One 17th century journal describes a samurai family eating rice bran while their lord feasted because they'd gifted all their actual rice. Marriage becomes political theater. Your wife was chosen to strengthen clan alliances, not for love. She knows to curtsy deeper to higher-ranking ladies at court. She's memorized which fabrics are reserved for which families. A single fashion misstep could ruin you both. In 1655, a retainer's wife wore plum blossom patterns reserved for the daimyo's concubines. They shaved her head and sent her to a nunnery.
Her husband had to stand watches in women's robes for a month.
The ultimate test could come any day. Maybe it's refusing a bribe from an enemy agent while starving. Perhaps it's holding a castle gate alone against 50 attackers. Worst is the quiet command. Prepare your second. That means your lord needs someone to die for his mistake. There's no refusing. If you're lucky, he'll let you commit seppuku in private rather than execute you publicly like a criminal. Either way, your last words must praise his benevolence. Yet some embrace this life completely. They rise before dawn to polish armor they'll never wear in battle. They empty their savings for gifts that won't be remembered. Their greatest pride comes from being used as stepping stones for their lord's ambitions. In 1601, a retainer drowned retrieving his daimyo's hat from a river. His death poem read, "1,000 honors for this fleeting chance to serve." You'll never know if he meant it. That's what terrifies you most. After years of kneeling, bowing, and swallowing insults, you might actually believe this is noble. The conditioning runs deeper than blood. When your lord praises your obedience, your chest swells with pride. When he ignores you, you scrutinize your behavior for flaws. The fear of disappointing him outweighs the fear of death. Now, when you see peasant parents hugging their children, something bitter rises in your throat. That freedom to love unconditionally was trained out of you at age 4. Tomorrow will bring new demands, fresh humiliations. You'll comply without hesitation. The true mark of a perfect samurai isn't skill with a blade. It's the complete erasure of self. Your reflection in the polished armor shows only the face your daimyo wants to see. The man underneath disappeared years ago. You sharpen your writing brush before dawn, just like you sharpen your swords. The morning ritual begins with preparing your death poem, not because you plan to die today, but because you might. Every samurai keeps a folded paper in their sleeve with their jisei, the final words they'll leave behind. You've revised yours 17 times since coming of age. Yesterday's version compared life to a candle flame. Today's draft mentions cherry blossoms instead. Neither feels quite right yet. Death isn't abstract for samurai. It's as familiar as your armor straps. Children learn seppuku etiquette before they learn multiplication. At 7, you attended your uncle's ritual suicide after a battle loss. He knelt on white cloth, composed his poem flawlessly, then sliced himself open without a sound. What stuck with you wasn't the blood, but how his breathing never changed. That's the standard. Now you practice the same detachment by writing farewell letters to your family every new year. You'll never send them, but sealing each one feels like closing a coffin lid. The mindset seeps into everything. When you choose a kimono, you consider how the fabric will look when your corpse is dressed for viewing. Your sword polishing routine includes imagining how your second will clean the blade after beheading you. Even meals become exercises in finality. You chew each bite as if it's your last. In 1599, a retainer supposedly starved to death during a siege because he refused to eat his emergency rations. His diary entry read, "Better to die with a clean conscience than full bowels." Preparations get morbidly specific. Your will updates monthly, listing which cousin inherits your swords and which disgraced uncle gets left out. You've memorized 3 sutras for funeral rites and know which incense smells least oppressive in mourning chambers. A 17th century manual recommends keeping nail clippings and hair in a labeled pouch so survivors can enshrine them properly. You comply without questioning. These aren't superstitions, they're court protocols. Last autumn, you spent weeks carving your memorial tablet, sanding the wood until it shone like a mirror, just in case. The poems reveal more than speeches ever could. A famous daimyo's last words were simply, "Moonlight through the broken window." Cryptic, but everyone understood. He died defending a ruined castle. Another wrote,
No post horse for my next journey. You admire their restraint. Your own attempts feel clumsy by comparison. Last month's draft included a line about wind in barley fields that your tutor crossed out immediately. Too pastoral, he said. Samurai die in courtyards, not farms. The constant awareness changes how you live. You notice morning birdsong more intensely, knowing it might be your last. Conversations with your wife take on sudden weight. Each could be your final words to her. Even trivial choices matter. In 1633, a retainer missed his chance to die honorably because he'd worn informal sandals that day. They made him kneel in the servants' entrance for his seppuku instead of the main hall. The disgrace lingered beyond death. Seppuku looms largest in your preparations. You practice the motions nightly, palms on thighs, back straight, the precise angle for the dagger thrust. The cut must be clean, left to right, then slightly upward. Hesitation means disgrace. Your second stands ready with the katana, but your real test comes before the blade ever touches skin. A 1655 account describes a warrior who botched his suicide cut. His final act? Biting his tongue off to stifle the screams, while his second took extra strokes to finish the job. The payoff comes unexpectedly. During a routine patrol, bandits ambush your party. An arrow whizzes past your throat. In that heartbeat before combat, you don't feel fear, just annoyance that your death poem still needs work. The detachment saves you. While others hesitate, your sword moves automatically. Later, picking arrows from your saddle, you realize the truth. All those years of morbid preparation weren't about dying well. They were the only way to live like this. Now, when you see peasants grieving their dead, their wails seem foreign. You haven't cried since childhood, not even at your father's funeral. The closest you come is revising your jisei again tonight, searching for words worthy of a warrior's end. The candle gutters. Outside, an owl calls. You ink one final line, comparing life to a half-drawn sword. Still not perfect. You'll try again tomorrow, if you live that long. Crawl the bandit attack proved one thing. Battle isn't the messy Hollywood duel you imagined. Reality is dirtier. When you finally see combat up close, the romance of warriorhood vanishes instantly. The first man you kill smells like sour wine and old sweat. His dying gurgle sounds nothing like the noble last words in plays. You wipe blood from your cheek, realizing no poem could capture this stench, this weight, this sickening anticlimax. The dagger at your belt suddenly feels heavier. Tomorrow's draft will need darker imagery. The sword fight from your favorite samurai movie. Total fiction. Real combat smells like blood, shit, and rust. Your first battle begins with arrows darkening the sky. Not the neat volleys you practice at the range, but a chaotic hail of missiles thudding into mud, horses, and men. Some shafts whistle past your ear so close, you feel the fletching brush your cheek. One catches a foot soldier in the throat. He collapses, gurgling, hands clawing at the wood protruding from his neck. No heroic last words, just wet, choking sounds as you step over him. Your training fails you immediately. The fancy kenjutsu forms mean nothing when 3 enemies surround you. A farmer-turned-rebel swings his naginata like a scythe, forcing you back. Your counterstroke meets resistance halfway through his ribcage. The blade catches on bone. As you struggle to yank it free, another attacker slams his spear into your side. The armor holds, but the impact bruises your liver. You taste copper. This isn't a duel. It's a bar brawl with better weapons. The weapons themselves disappoint. That razor-sharp katana, nearly useless against armored opponents. You switch to your war pick, better for hooking helmets and crushing skulls. Around you, samurai discard their swords for whatever works. Broken spears, rocks, even bare hands. One retainer gnaws an enemy's ear off during a grapple. Another strangles a man with his own helmet cord. The 1575 records from Nagashino describe warriors bludgeoning fallen foes with their own severed limbs. Elegance dies fast in the mud. Horses make everything worse. Your daimyo's cavalry charges through the melee, trampling friend and foe alike. A stallion's hoof cracks a wounded man's skull like a melon. The brain matter splatters your greaves. From horseback, archers pick off targets at random. You take an arrow through your sleeve. It pins the fabric to your arm, but misses flesh. The samurai next to you isn't so lucky. A shot enters his left eye socket. He collapses without a sound. You'll find out later he was your cousin. The terrain turns treacherous. What looked like flat ground conceals rice paddy ditches. Your armored foot sinks calf deep in muck. As you struggle free, an axeman charges. You sidestep just enough. His blade shears off your shoulder guard instead of your collarbone. The return strike caves in his face. His teeth scatter across the mud like dropped coins. Later, when the battle moves to burning buildings, you'll fight through smoke so thick you taste next week. The heat makes blood steam where it pools. Combat fatigue sets in fast. After 20 minutes, your arms feel filled with lead. Your vision tunnels. Each parry comes slower than the last. A spear thrust you could have blocked an hour ago now slips through, drawing first blood across your thigh. The pain feels distant. More immediate is the shame. You've trained for this moment since childhood, yet here you are, barely standing. In 1614, a Shimazu warrior described his sword arm going numb during the siege of Osaka. He resorted to headbutting enemies until his helmet broke. Killing loses meaning quickly. The 10th man you cut down dies like the first 9. Messy, undignified, forgettable. You stop noting faces after a while. One rebel looks much like another when their intestines spill out the same way. The Bushido code never mentioned this monotony of slaughter. Chronicles from Sekigahara describe veterans dispatching wounded foes with the same boredom as farmers thinning rice shoots. Efficiency replaces honor fast. The aftermath lingers worse than the fighting. When the daimyo's horn signals victory, you're left staring at the field. Bodies pile in grotesque heaps, some still twitching. A retainer you trained with lies gutted, his hands clutching a wound that will never heal. The looters are already at work, stripping armor and prying gold teeth. One peasant rebel stirs, weakly. Your captain nods. You finish him with a dagger to the throat. The spray hits your lips. It's warmer than you expected. Your armor tells the story better than any poem. Dents record near misses. Blood spatter maps the killing blows. The cleaning process takes hours, scraping flesh from crevices, rinsing gore from chainmail. When you finally remove it, the stench clings to your skin for days. No amount of scrubbing gets rid of death's oily residue. Back home, your wife notes how you flinch at sudden noises now. The children notice you staring at nothing. The truth settles in slowly. That pristine katana collection gathering dust in your rack, decoration. The real weapons, the ones that saved your life, are battered, notched, and stained beyond recognition, just like you. When the next summons comes, you'll sharpen them again. Not because you want to, but because that's what samurai do. The battlefield won't care about your nightmares or shaking hands. It only cares if you can still swing a blade when it matters. Yorina. Tomorrow brings inspection. Your captain will check for nicks in your sword, bloodstains on your gloves, hesitation in your movements. Passing means another campaign. Failing means disgrace. You pray for rain. Maybe floods will delay the march. No such luck. The weather stays clear. As you repack your gear, your fingers linger on the death poem in your sleeve. The cherry blossom metaphor still feels dishonest. Maybe next draft you'll compare life to broken armor. Dented, but still holding together. Barely. Victory doesn't feel like you imagined. The battlefield falls silent except for the moans of dying men and the crows already circling. Your arms ache from swinging your sword. Your armor is dented and your mouth tastes like iron and sweat. The daimyo's heralds blow their horns to signal the win, but no one cheers. The real work starts now. First, the head count. You line up with the other survivors while scribes tally the living and the dead. They note every missing helmet crest, every bloodied banner. The numbers matter more than the men. If your unit lost too many, your commander's reputation takes a hit. If you killed too few enemies, your bravery gets questioned. In 1582, a retainer from the Oda clan was demoted because his squad only took 17 heads instead of the expected 20. The scribe's brush scratches against the paper like a knife on bone. You stand straighter when they pass you. Then comes the grimmest task, collecting heads. Samurai tradition demands proof of kills. So you kneel beside the corpses and saw. The knife slips twice before you get the angle right. The spine makes a wet crack when it severs. You tie the hair to your saddle alongside the others, your trophies for the victory ceremony. The faces look younger in death. One still has a piece of rice stuck in his teeth. The daimyo will inspect them later, judging the quality of your kills. In 1600, a warrior at Sekigahara was mocked for bringing back the head of a toothless old man. He spent the next year as a laughingstock. The cleanup is worse. Peasant conscripts drag the dead into piles. Some bodies bloat so fast their armor bursts open. You help identify your own. Your cousin's corpse is missing a hand, but you recognize the scar on his knee from when you trained together as boys. His death poem is still folded in his sleeve, unsmudged. The scribe marks him as honorably deceased in service instead of disgraced by capture. The difference means his family keeps their stipend. You don't mention how you found him. Face down in the mud, trampled by your own cavalry. The rituals start at dusk. Priests chant sutras while you burn incense for the fallen enemies. Even rebels get memorialized, not out of kindness, but to appease their vengeful spirits. Your hands shake as you light the sticks. The smoke sticks to your clothes, mixing with the stench of blood. In 1578, a Wasugi clan commander ignored the rites after a battle. His men reported nightmares of vengeful ghosts until he paid for a proper temple service. You mumble the prayers, just in case. Reporting to the daimyo is its own ordeal. You kneel in the command tent, your armor hastily scrubbed, your trophies arranged neatly outside. The Lord listens as your captain recounts the battle, pausing only to question discrepancies. Did you really strike down that many enemies? Were any of them fleeing when killed? One wrong answer could mean demotion. In 1637, a warrior exaggerated his kills during the Shimabara Rebellion. When inspectors found unmarked bodies among his claimed trophies, he was ordered to commit seppuku. You keep your report short and precise. Rewards come with strings. The daimyo grants you a captured spear, a minor boost in stipend, and public praise. The honor feels hollow when you see the families of the dead weeping near the gates. The wife of your fallen cousin glares at you during the ceremony. She knows you lived while her husband didn't. The daimyo doesn't care. His speech focuses on loyalty and sacrifice. You bow deeply, the new spear heavy in your hands. Later, you'll realize its shaft is cracked. The celebration feast is a quiet affair. No one drinks too much, no one laughs. The food is tasteless, and the sake burns your throat. Across the room, your captain discusses the next campaign. The war isn't over, just paused. You pick at your rice, remembering a rebel you killed, the one who begged for mercy in a dialect you almost understood. His blood had dried under your fingernails for days. Scrutiny follows you home. The village elders eye your bandages and ask pointed questions. Did you fight honorably? Were your kills clean? Your wife says nothing when you wake up screaming the first night. She's heard it before. The children avoid you until you've washed the battlefield stench away. Even then, they flinch when you move too fast. The final insult comes weeks later. A messenger brings a scroll, your official battle record. The scribes misspelled your name. Your 2 confirmed kills are listed as assists. The daimyo's seal at the bottom looks smudged. You roll the parchment tightly, stifling the urge to burn it. This is what victory earns you. A minor footnote in someone else's glory. Tomorrow, the armor needs mending, the swords need polishing, and the daimyo expects drills at dawn. The war isn't done with you yet. Neither is the guilt. You kneel by your small household shrine and light another stick of incense, this one for the men you killed. The ash falls like snow. Outside, the crows still circle, waiting for the next battle. The peasants still fear you when you ride through town, but their bows feel shallower now. They know the cost of your victory. Their missing sons, their burned fields. None of that made it into the official reports. You spur your horse faster, but the stairs follow. The dead don't care about honor. They just stay dead. Your sword gives you power over them, but your stomach depends on their labor. The peasants bow when you pass, their faces pressed into the dirt. But without their rice, you starve. This is the contradiction of being samurai. You look down on those who feed you. The hierarchy is clear. They work, you fight. They obey, you command. But the balance is more fragile than it seems. The rules of interaction are strict and unforgiving. Peasants must kneel when addressing you, eyes lowered, hands folded. They speak in hushed tones, using honorifics that twist their sentences into knots. A single misspoken word can mean trouble. In 1634, a farmer in Osaka used the wrong verb form with a samurai and lost 2 fingers for his insolence. You've seen it happen, watched as your fellow retainers disciplined villagers for minor slights. A lingering glance, a poorly timed cough, even standing too close to a samurai's horse could be punished. The peasants know this. They've learned to shrink into themselves when you're near. Taxes bind them to you. Every harvest they hand over half their rice, sometimes more if the daimyo demands it. Their granaries empty while your storehouses fill. The math is simple. Their hunger pays for your armor. You've ridden past villages where children's bellies bulge from malnutrition, while your own children eat regularly. The system justifies it. Peasants exist to serve, samurai to rule. But sometimes at night, you wonder how long that justification will hold. Peasant revolts are rare, but they happen. When the taxes grow too heavy or the harvests fail, desperation overrides fear. In 1590, villagers in Shimotsuke rose up after back-to-back crop failures. They burned tax records and killed a magistrate. The response was predictable. Samurai cavalry cut them down within days. The rebel leaders' heads decorated the castle gates for months. You've heard the stories, seen the blackened patches where rebel villages once stood. The message is clear. Defiance means annihilation. My Riesel. Yet you rely on them more than you admit. Their rice pays your stipend. Their labor builds your fortresses. Even your swords pass through their hands. The steel mined by peasants, the handles wrapped in their hemp cord. Without them, the entire system collapses. That's why the punishments are so harsh. That's why you're encouraged to show no mercy. Kindness is a weakness in this equation. In 1612, a retainer in Kyushu reduced the village's tax quota after a poor harvest. His daimyo accused him of undermining authority and demoted him to foot soldier. Pays the labor die lever. Economic ties create strange dependencies. You disdain merchants for their greed, but peasants? They're beneath notice unless they step out of line. Yet their sweat oils the machine that keeps you armed and fed. You pretend not to see their suffering, the way mothers trade daughters for extra rations, the way old men disappear into the woods during famines, never returning. The system depends on this willful blindness. The alternative is admitting how precarious your privilege really is. Occasionally, the facade cracks. You see it in the way an old vineyard worker's hands tremble as he offers you the season's first grapes, a gift that's really a bribe for protection. Or how a village elder's eyes dart when reporting this year's yield, knowing anything less than perfection means punishment. These moments unsettle you, though you'd never admit it. The peasant's fear is supposed to reassure you of your place. Instead, it reminds you how easily the roles could reverse. The isolation wears on you. Peasants shrink away. Merchants flatter you while resenting your privilege. Even other samurai are potential rivals. Your status sets you apart, but it also traps you. You can't relax at village festivals, can't share a drink with farmers, can't even pat a child's head without their parents stiffening. The gulf between you is too wide. Still, you play your part. When peasants approach, you straighten your posture and let them kneel. You accept their gifts without thanks, because thanking them would imply equality. You enforce the daimyo's laws without question, even when they leave villages starving, because that's what samurai do. Tomorrow will be the same. You'll ride past rice paddies where bent figures toil under the sun. They'll pause to bow as you pass. You won't acknowledge them. The dance continues, day after day, year after year. The peasants feed you, you rule them, and somewhere beneath the rituals and hierarchy, the unspoken truth lingers. Their suffering built your world. One bad harvest, one extended famine, and it could all unravel. The thought stays with you as you clean your sword at day's end. The blade shines, polished to perfection. The handle is sturdy, the edge sharp. But without the peasant's rice, it's just a metal stick. Without their labor, your armor is empty. Without their fear, your title means nothing. You sheath the sword slowly, pushing the realization away. Some truths cut deeper than any blade. Your marriage contract was signed when you were still in diapers. The girl chosen for you might be the daughter of your father's ally, or perhaps the niece of a rival daimyo needing reconciliation. Romantic love isn't part of the equation. This is a political alliance wearing the mask of domesticity. Your wedding day feels less like a celebration and more like a treaty signing. The bride's kimono costs more than her family's annual rice yield, but nobody mentions that. The rules of samurai marriage are strict. You'll share a home, but rarely your thoughts. She'll manage your household like a military outpost. Meal schedules pinned to the wall, servants drilled to perfection, guest protocols rehearsed weekly. Your wife knows better than to greet you with casual chatter when you return from duty. A proper samurai spouse waits silently with tea and a fresh robe, eyes lowered. In 1628, a retainer in Kyoto divorced his wife for smiling too much during a formal visit from his captain. The official reason? Excessive familiarity unbecoming of a warrior's household. Affection is permissible only in designated forms. You might compose restrained poems about her hairpins gleaming in lamplight, though never about her face. She'll stitch elaborate embroidery for your armor linings, hidden messages in the stitching patterns only you understand. These gestures are the closest you'll get to love letters. When you were 14, your tutor burned the one heartfelt note you tried to send a childhood friend. Samurai don't grovel over women, he'd said, watching the paper blacken in the brazier. Concubines exist as pressure valves for the system. Nobles gift them like finely crafted swords. A trained geisha for your 20th birthday. A widowed court lady after your first battle victory. They live in separate quarters, their children legally inferior to your wife's. The rules are clear. Keep them content but distant. In 1599, a Hiroshima daimyo executed a retainer whose concubine had grown bold enough to attend family prayers. The woman was sold to a brothel, her infant son smothered in his sleep. Adultery isn't just forbidden, it's suicidal. A samurai caught with another man's wife faces decapitation without trial. Peasant women who stray get sold into slavery. The punishment sessions are public spectacles. You once saw a merchant's daughter paraded naked through town before being locked in a cage atop the castle walls. Her lover, a low-ranking foot soldier, was forced to watch as dogs tore apart his severed hands. The video mentions, if you want to experience love in feudal Japan, you'll need to watch a no drama about two doomed lovers who turn into mist. Some couples rebel quietly. There are tales of secret moonlit meetings, letters hidden in scabbards, even poisonings of inconvenient spouses. Most don't end well. In 1575, two young retainers from rival clans tried to elope. They were caught at the border, crucified back to back, so they'd die watching each other's faces rot. Their families burned all records of their existence. You've heard whispered versions of this story since childhood, not as a tragedy, but as a cautionary tale. The strain shows in small ways. Your wife develops a tremor in her left hand from gripping her sewing needle too tightly. You wake up grinding your teeth. Neither of you mentions it. She knows better than to ask about your nightmares. You pretend not to notice when she cries silently during her monthly visits to the family shrine. The unspoken agreement holds. Maintain appearances, whatever the cost. Dibu-ibe. Children complicate the charade. Your son must never see you argue. Your daughter learns early that her future marriage will be another strategic move in the clan's endless game. You catch her practicing blank expressions in the mirror at age 7, smoothing her face into the perfect samurai daughter's mask. It's the same drill you underwent, just with prettier fabrics. Occasionally the facade cracks. There's one autumn evening when your wife surprises you by remembering your favorite childhood sweet, millet cakes with chestnut paste. She's bribed a merchant's wife for the recipe. You eat them in silence, the taste stirring memories you thought were buried. Neither of you acknowledges the gesture. But the next morning, you leave a single camellia blossom on her writing desk, the samurai version of a love letter. Society calls this restraint. You call it survival. The video notes, romantic love was often relegated to a side quest, unlikely to be successfully completed. Quote, your marriage isn't about happiness. It's about producing heirs who will keep the clan alive and ensuring no scandals destabilize your lord's domain. You'll die having never held your wife's hand in public, never whispered, I love you, without checking for eavesdroppers. The consequences of disobedience haunt you. Last winter, a retainer in your battalion was caught writing poetry to a courtesan. His father-in-law had him transferred to a freezing northern garrison. The man's wife shaved her head and entered a nunnery out of shame. Their toddler son was given to cousins to raise. You pass the abandoned house sometimes, its empty veranda collecting dust. Tomorrow will be the same as today. You'll rise before dawn, your wife already awake to prepare your armor. She'll adjust your sleeve folds without speaking, her fingers brushing your wrist for half a second longer than necessary. You won't react. Can't react. The rules are clear. Samurai don't love. They endure. Your name isn't just yours. It's a chain linking generations of ancestors to generations yet unborn. The first thing you learn as a samurai child is how many great uncles died honorably in battle, all of them, and how many died in disgrace, 0, officially. The family shrine holds their mortuary tablets polished daily, each ancestor's death poem by heart before you know how to write your own name. One cousin's verse mentions autumn leaves. He fell at Sekigahara. Another's describes breaking waves, drowned carrying dispatches during a storm. Their ghosts watch your every move. Every decision is ancestral calculus. Choosing a sparring partner. Consider how beating the daimyo's nephew might offend his lineage. Picking a wife. Her family's scandals from the 1400s still get whispered about at court. Even what you eat matters. Your grandfather supposedly hated sea bream, so you avoid it at banquets despite loving the taste. In 1615, a retainer in Osaka was demoted for serving eel to a visiting lord whose ancestor had died choking on fish bones. The oversight cost him 5 years of promotions. The rituals bind you tighter than armor straps. Every morning, you light incense for the family dead. Every victory requires delivering a formal report to their spirits. After your first battle, your father makes you spend all night copying the names of ancestors onto memorial slips. 317 names dating back to the Genpei War. Your hand cramps around the brush. One smudged character could dishonor them all. Disgrace spreads like bloodstains. When your uncle failed to hold a bridge in 1592, the shame didn't stop with his seppuku. Your sister's marriage got canceled. Your father lost his advisory position. The family lands were reassigned to a more reliable lineage. For 10 years, your mother had to bow to women she once commanded. You were 6 when it happened, old enough to understand the lesson. Individual failure means collective punishment. Hezbollah, marriage compounds the pressure. Your wife isn't just a spouse, she's a genealogical auditor. She corrects you when you misremember which ancestor founded the family's sword style. She reminds your children that their great-grandmother composed poetry for the shogun. Her dowry included a 7-generation family tree with annotations about which relatives died well and which deaths required context. In 1633, a Hiroshima bride returned to her family after discovering her husband hadn't memorized his great-uncle's death poem. The divorce papers cited spiritual negligence. Naval pacts are the nuclear option. When the Shimabara rebels were crushed in 1638, 12 related families performed mass seppuku rather than face interrogation. The children went first, quick knife strokes to the throat from their parents. Then the adults disemboweled themselves in order of seniority. Officials praised their commendable family coordination. You've known since childhood that if your clan ever falls, you'll be expected to open your youngest son's arteries before your own. The knives are kept oiled for this purpose. The weight manifests in strange ways. You develop perfect posture from years of bowing to portraits. Your nightmares feature ancestors shaking their heads when you stumble during tea ceremony. Once you laughed too loudly at a joke. Your wife's flinch reminded you that your great-grandfather was known for his dignified silence. Even in private, you're never truly alone. The past watches through the eyes of painted scrolls lining the hallway. Financial burdens intertwine with spiritual ones. Maintaining the ancestral graves eats up a quarter of your stipend. The annual commemoration feast requires mortgaging your summer home every few years.
You once suggested skipping the ritual for your great-great-aunt, a minor figure who married into another clan. Your father didn't speak to you for a month. Records show that in 1588, a retainer sold his heirloom armor to pay for his grandfather's 50th death anniversary. He was demoted for impoverishing the family honor. The pressure creates bizarre family dynamics. Your uncle's widow still lives with you, not out of kindness, but because returning her to her birth clan would imply criticism of your late uncle's marriage choice. Your little sister practices calligraphy 8 hours a day because her namesake ancestor was a famous scribe. When your toddler son shows no interest in swords, the family debates if he might be spiritually deficient. No one says the quiet part aloud, that maybe after 12 generations of warriors, the bloodline is weakening.
Rebellion is impossible. You once tried composing an original death poem instead of copying your grandfather's. The family priest burned it and assigned you 300 lines of sutras as punishment. When you drunkenly joked about your stuffy ancestors at a private gathering, word reached your father by morning. The beating left scars, but the real punishment was his speech afterward. You aren't just disgracing me, you're spitting on 3 centuries of sacrifice. Modern psychology might call this intergenerational trauma. You call it Tuesday. The ghosts in your bloodline don't haunt, they dictate. That knife scar on your thigh, from your father correcting your sword stance the way his father corrected his. The way you flinch at sudden noises, a remnant of childhood drills, where servants would drop gongs to test your ancestral composure. Even your victories aren't yours. When you won your first duel at 16, the clan elders nodded and said you'd finally lived up to your name. The cruelest part? You'll do this to your own children. Already your 5-year-old recites lineage facts with the same blank focus you once had. His tiny hands polish ancestor swords twice his height. Yesterday, he asked why great-grandfather's portrait always frowns. You didn't tell him the truth, that the man died mid-scowl during a failed rebellion, and the artist captured his last terrible expression. The boy will learn soon enough. Tomorrow begins as always. Incense at dawn, then reciting names until your throat burns. You'll straighten great-uncle's crooked memorial tablet and pretend not to notice how the lacquer is flaking. Your wife will remind the children which ancestor first served this daimyo 12 generations back. And when you ride past the graveyard at dusk, you'll slow your horse just enough to acknowledge the silent watchers under the mossy stones. They own you as thoroughly as your daimyo does. The chain stretches endlessly in both directions, past and future, and you're just the latest link, straining under the weight. You notice the changes slowly at first. The merchants who used to grovel when you passed now barely look up from their account books. Your stipend hasn't increased in years, but the price of sword polish has tripled. That fancy new kabuki theater in town, built by a rice broker who once would have been forbidden from wearing silk. The world is shifting, and your sword can't stop it. Uania starts collecting dust. The daimyo calls fewer musters these days, preferring negotiations over battles. Last month you had to pawn your best tassets to pay for your daughter's wedding. The pawnbroker, a chubby man whose grandfather sold radishes, had the gall to examine the craftsmanship before offering half what it's worth. You took the coins anyway. The rice merchant won't accept honor as payment. Summary becomes impossible to ignore. You see it in the little things, the way your neighbor's wife patches her kimono sleeves 5 times over, how your cousin secretly teaches merchant sons archery for extra coins. At night, some retainers remove their top knots and work as laborers. Others sell family heirlooms piece by piece. In 1720s Edo, records show samurai borrowing money from the very merchants they're supposed to despise. The interest rates are brutal. The economic shifts hit hard. Those merchants you scorned now control the rice markets. The artisans you looked down upon sign contracts with Dutch traders. Suddenly, swordsmanship matters less than accounting. Your father would have disowned you for learning abacus, but these days you sneak lessons from a clerk. The multiplication tables stick in your throat like betrayal. Barrier the psychological toll is worse than hunger. You catch yourself staring at your reflection. That frayed collar, those calluses fading from lack of training. At the annual inspection, the armorers whisper that only half the retainers still maintain their gear properly. The rest let the silk cords unravel, the metal plates rust. Why bother when the last war ended 15 years ago? Some adapt poorly. The baths reek of sake these days. Samurai drowning their irrelevance in cheap alcohol. Duels over trivial insults increase as men desperate to prove their worth pick fights. Last winter, a desperate retainer staged a fake attack on his own lord, just to demonstrate his vigilance. They saw through it immediately. His seppuku was poorly attended. Others adapt too well. Your childhood friend now runs a thriving brothel, his swords hanging decoratively behind the reception desk. Another classmate manufactures umbrellas with his family crest stamped discreetly inside. The purists call them traders, but their children eat regular meals. You watch them prosper while your own stipend shrinks. The hierarchy crumbles in bizarre ways. That cocky young merchant who supplies your lord's silk now gets better seats at festivals than you do. At the last moon viewing party, you caught the daimyo's treasurer, a man whose father was a fishmonger, correcting your sword etiquette. The worst part? He was right. Your family feels the strain. Your wife secretly takes in sewing from wealthy commoners, her hands growing rough from the work. Your son prefers studying Dutch medicine to sword drills. When he announces he's apprenticing with a foreign doctor, you want to beat the defiance out of him. Instead, you pawn another heirloom to pay his tuition. The final insult comes quietly. The daimyo announces he's modernizing the clan's forces. They're buying European muskets, forming infantry units. Your decades of sword mastery mean nothing next to some peasant who can load and fire on command. They offer you a teaching position, half your current stipend to show spoiled bureaucrats' sons how to hold a katana for appearances. You accept. Clarence at the armorers one last time. The workshop that once bustled with apprentices now has 2 old men repairing police uniforms. They recognize your face but can't quite place your name. As you leave, you overhear a merchant's son mockingly recite Bushido principles to his laughing friends. The words you were ready to die for have become a punchline. But the transition leaves scars. You wake up reaching for a sword that's no longer at your bedside. You flinch when commoners don't bow deeply enough. Then remember it doesn't matter anymore. At the public baths, young clerks debate whether samurai were ever truly necessary. You sink deeper into the water until their voices blur. Some traditions stubbornly remain. You still wake before dawn, though now it's to check account books instead of polishing armor. You still compose death poems, though they're more about unpaid debts than battlefield glory. And when your grandson asks why you keep that rusty old katana on the wall, you don't tell him about honor or duty. You just say it's a family heirloom. Easing humiliation is self-inflicted. After the pawn shop refuses your last sword, you visit your old captain, now a sock brewer. He offers you a clerk's position tracking inventory. The pay is decent, the work is easy. As you kneel to accept, your back straightens into the perfect formal bow without conscious thought. Some habits, at least, refuse to die. Tomorrow will be different. You'll put on the crisp Western-style uniform your new employer provides. You'll learn to use that strange ticking machine called a clock to track work hours. And when your merchant boss forgets to use honorifics, you'll pretend not to notice.
The sword at your hip is just for show now, a decoration, like the painted screens in your office. At night, you still sometimes reach for the whetstone before remembering there's nothing left to sharpen. The calluses on your hands soften daily. The world has moved on, and against all odds, you're moving with it. The last samurai aren't the ones who die gloriously. They're the ones who live long enough to become irrelevant. Your death poem, when you finally write it, won't mention cherry blossoms or moonbeams. Just 3 simple lines. I adjusted, I survived, forgive me.
The samurai disappeared, but their ghost still haunts Japan. Bushido, the warrior code that demanded discipline, loyalty, and honor, never really died. It just changed forms. You can see its fingerprints everywhere if you know where to look. Those 80-hour work weeks at Tokyo offices, that's Bushido's loyalty until death, repurposed for salarymen. The way baseball players practice swing mechanics for 14 hours straight, that's just swordsmanship with bats. Collaborating. Corporate Japan adopted Bushido wholesale. Companies became the new clans, CEOs, the new daimyo. The lifetime employment system mirrors how samurai pledged generations of service. Office workers still use warrior lingo. They call promotions battles won and layoffs honorable discharges. In 2008, a Mitsubishi executive committed suicide after a product recall, leaving a note about taking responsibility. His ancestors would have recognized the impulse. Martial arts keep the old ways alive differently. Kendo tournaments preserve sword techniques, but the bamboo swords and padded armor remove the killing. Judo and karate dojos preach self-improvement instead of battlefield effectiveness. It's Bushido, with the blood drained out. The most traditional schools still make students clean the dojo floor bare-handed, not because it needs cleaning, but because scrubbing wood grains teaches humility, the same way it did in 1600. The darker sides persist too. Japan's suicide rate echoes the seppuku impulse. In 2011, after the Fukushima disaster, the plant manager nearly killed himself from shame before colleagues stopped him. Group loyalty still overrides individual needs. Workers avoid taking vacations because it betrays the team. You can still lose your job for publicly disagreeing with company policy, just like samurai lost status for questioning lords. Lopedia gets repackaged for foreign consumption. American CEOs read Hagakure adaptations about, quote, winning through perseverance. Silicon Valley types meditate like Zen warriors before product launches. Most miss the point entirely. They want the discipline without the self-sacrifice, the honor without the consequences. A California tech bro telling his team to, quote, be samurai would faint if asked to actually live on a warrior's stipend. The psychological appeal makes sense. Bushido offers clarity in a chaotic world. Its rules tell you exactly how to act. Work hard, obey superiors, endure suffering silently. In uncertain times, that rigidity feels comforting. Junior salarymen memorize company policies like samurai memorized clan codes. Office ladies practice tea ceremony to channel warrior wife discipline. Everyone's playing dress-up with different parts of the past. Modern Japan wrestles with this inheritance. Some salarymen snap under the pressure, becoming hikikomori, shut-ins. Others embrace black company workplaces, where abuse gets excused as character building. There's a reason karoshi, death from overwork, entered the global vocabulary. The 2015 lawsuit against advertising giant Dentsu, after a 24-year-old employee jumped to her death, forced national soul-searching about how much Bushido is too much. New editions of the Hagakure get published with management advice sections. Companies implement Premium Friday early dismissals, while still expecting midnight overtime. Young workers push back through quiet quitting, doing the bare minimum while maintaining appearances. It's a modern version of samurai who polished their armor but avoided real battles. The aesthetic survives strongest. You see it in the clean lines of Apple products designed by a Zen Buddhist, in the precision of sushi chefs' knife work, in the minimalist decor of luxury hotels. What was once martial discipline becomes design principle. A Tokyo architect bows exactly 15 degrees when meeting clients, the same angle his ancestor used sheathing swords. The forms remain even when the meaning fades. Pop culture keeps resurrecting Bushido for new purposes. Anime heroes embody warrior virtues without the bloodshed. Video game protagonists follow honor codes adapted for digital worlds. A 2023 survey showed 68% of Japanese corporate trainees cited manga like Rurouni Kenshin as influencing their work ethic more than actual business books. The ideals get sanded down into safer shapes. Erotoshi's traditions grow more rigid as others fade. Tea ceremony schools still punish students for incorrect spoon placement, just like 1700s sword masters did for imperfect cuts. But the actual tea masters who once served warlords now host tourist experiences. You can pay 5,000 yen to wear a rented kimono and sip matcha, where samurai once plotted rebellions. The ritual outlived its original purpose. The most team to count through Moor, Brangs, or Jeans raced and surfered. Haunting legacy might be emotional. Japanese still pride themselves on stoicism, hiding pain behind polite smiles. Hospital patients apologize for burdening nurses. Earthquake survivors queue orderly for rationed supplies. This echoes the Bushido ideal of enduring suffering silently for the greater good. The discipline helps society function, but leaves individuals isolated behind masks of composure. Bushido's endurance proves how badly people crave structure. Its modern version offers corporate loyalty instead of clan loyalty, workaholism instead of battlefield glory. The swords became neckties, the armor turned into suits, but the chain of command remains. Salarymen bow to managers who bow to executives who bow to shareholders. A new aristocracy with the same expectation of absolute service. Tomorrow's Japan will keep reinventing Bushido for new eras. Maybe robotics engineers will adopt samurai terminology next. Perhaps AI ethics debates will cite Hagakure passages about righteous action. The core dilemma remains: how to preserve valuable discipline without the dehumanizing demands. The ghost isn't going anywhere. It just keeps finding new bodies to inhabit. The truth is, nobody follows real Bushido anymore. Not strictly, but it shapes behaviors in ways people don't even notice. That stiff bow from the convenience store clerk, the way your boss works through pneumonia, the company that won't fire incompetent workers but slowly freezes them out, all mutated remnants of a warrior code that refuses to die cleanly. Like the Ronin of old, Bushido wanders modern Japan, masterless, adapting, surviving on scraps of relevance. It's not honorable, but it is persistent. Let's be honest. You wouldn't last a day as a samurai. Think you could handle it? Let's review what we've covered. Your life would begin with a birth cast you couldn't escape. At age 3, you'd get your first wooden sword and start training until your hands bled. By 7, you'd learn to suppress every natural emotion. No crying, no laughing too loud, no flinching when hot wax dripped on your skin. Adolescence meant memorizing poetry that could save or doom you,
depending on how well you metaphorically kissed your lord's backside. Adulthood brought armor that weighed more than your childhood dreams, dawn meditations in freezing rivers, and the constant threat of seppuku if you offended the wrong person. And that's before we even get to the battles, where you'd hack through peasants turned rebels while arrows rained down and horses trampled the wounded. These now, self-assessment time. Could you kneel motionless for hours while your legs went numb? Would you let your lord's son break your nose during sparring to boost his confidence? Can you imagine slicing open your own stomach because you sighed at the wrong moment? Be honest. Most modern people complain when their Wi-Fi's slow or their coffee isn't hot enough. Samurai dealt with real problems, like choosing which finger to lose after misplacing a tax document. Matthias, the statistics aren't on your side. Historical records show the average samurai lifespan hovered around 40 years, if they avoided battle, disease, or ritual suicide. Infant mortality skewed the numbers, but even survivors faced brutal odds. About 1 in 5 died violently. Another 1 in 10 committed seppuku. The rest endured chronic pain from armor-induced spinal damage, malnutrition during sieges, or stress-related illnesses. Your modern immune system wouldn't stand a chance against Edo period dysentery. That man flu you complain about? Samurai fought through actual spear wounds without painkillers. Let's break down why you'd fail. First, the caste system. Born a merchant? Enjoy lifelong scorn despite your wealth. Peasant? Hope you like bowing to teenagers with swords. Even samurai lived in constant fear of offending higher-ranked warriors. In 1631, a retainer got demoted for serving the wrong type of fish at a banquet. Could you navigate that minefield without cracking? Next, the discipline. Samurai children trained 12 hours a day every day from toddlerhood. Miss a sword drill? Extra laps while carrying buckets of water. Show frustration? Your tutor doubles the workload. Modern gym routines pale in comparison. That Peloton you barely use? Samurai did horseback archery in full armor during blizzards, for fun. Then there's the emotional repression. Losing your dog meant writing a formal condolence letter with perfect calligraphy. Finding your wife cheating? Official protocol required gifting her lover a knife so he could commit honorable suicide. Break any rule and punishment was public. In 1654, a warrior wore a careless sign around his neck for a month after rust was found on his sword. His daughter's engagement got canceled. Could you handle that level of scrutiny over minor mistakes? Battle would break you fastest. Forget Hollywood duels. Real combat meant slogging through mud while arrows whizzed past, then hacking at enemies until your arms gave out. Afterward, you'd saw off heads as trophies. The smell alone would make most modern people vomit. In 1615, a samurai described slipping on his friend's intestines during the siege of Osaka. That's not Call of Duty. That's your Tuesday, if you'd been born 400 years ago. Modern life seems soft by comparison. Your worst day probably involves traffic or a bad Zoom connection. Samurai worried about ancestral shame, peasant revolts, and whether their death poem was poignant enough. That stressful work presentation? Try explaining to your daimyo why you lost his favorite horse during a flood. Bracelets. Yet here's the twist. You're living better than 99% of samurai ever did. Your food options aren't limited to rice and pickled plums. You can marry for love, or swipe left if it doesn't work out. Medical care won't involve leeches or screaming through amputations. Most importantly, you'll likely die old in bed rather than young on a battlefield. The samurai's world was brutal by necessity. Their code created order in chaotic times, but it also crushed individuality,
creativity, and basic human needs. That strict hierarchy kept Japan stable for centuries. But at what cost? Every time you complain about your boss, remember, at least they can't order you to disembowel yourself for sending a typo in an email. So, next time your coffee gets cold or your phone battery dies, take a breath. You're not facing seppuku over a poorly written haiku. Your biggest daily risk is maybe a paper cut. The past wasn't romantic, it was relentless, and you'd have cracked before breakfast. That's not an insult, it's perspective. Modern life has its frustrations, but compared to feudal Japan, you're living like an emperor. The samurai might have disdained your comfort, your freedoms, your right to complain, but they'd also be baffled by your lifespan, your health care, your ability to choose your own path. So, go ahead, grumble about your Wi-Fi. Just remember, somewhere in history, a 14-year-old samurai was getting whipped for blinking during meditation, and suddenly that buffering icon doesn't seem so bad. Final thoughts. However tough you think you are, history would have humbled you fast. The past wasn't for the weak, but it also wasn't for anyone who values happiness over duty. Your ancestors survived that world so you wouldn't have to. The least you can do is appreciate the luxury of being soft. The samurai's world demanded everything and gave little in return. Honor came at the cost of freedom, love, and sometimes life itself. Their strict code shaped Japan for centuries. But would you really want to live under those rules? Let me know in the comments which part of their life would have broken you first, the brutal training, the constant fear of disgrace, or the weight of ancestral expectations. If you found this look at history eye-opening, consider subscribing for more unfiltered glimpses into the past. Thanks for joining me tonight. Dim the lights, get comfortable, and I'll see you next time.